Check, 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 check. Say good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Glad you're here. Test, test, test.
Good morning, everybody. Nobody's going to pay attention because we messed with their seats. Good morning, everybody. All right, we're getting there. Welcome this morning if you are in the building. If you're joining us online, we're glad you're with us as well. If you walked in and tried to find your normal seat, we apologize, but not really. Thank you to those of you who brought bread and crackers, homemade goodness. We're excited to get to the feast this morning as well. So thank you for. Somebody walked in, they're like, I have bread. I don't know why, but I have bread. So thanks for rolling with things and always being up for an adventure. We really appreciate it. Just a couple of quick announcements, most of them that you know. We've been talking for a couple of weeks about a group that Mark and Heather Carroll are starting this fall, centered around a Bema podcast. So you would listen to a podcast during the week, and then you get together and discuss that podcast. It's all about like a different way to look at Scripture, a way to dig in a little bit and say, hey, maybe what I grew up learning about the background and cultural norms of the time, maybe those weren't right, or maybe they weren't full enough. So let's see what we can learn together. So curiosity is really all that's required to come and to join that group. So lots of details with the QR code on your bulletin, or you can always talk to Mark and Heather. They would be happy to talk to you about that. And then a barbecue coming up on September 22 at the Grushka's house. We'll kind of celebrate back to fall here a little bit with them. And then next week, Sunday, is Labor Day weekend. And we know that there are lots of people who are other places, shall we say, not here, maybe. So we usually take those weekends as a time to do something a little bit different, to gather in a park, to be outside. So we will do that next week. Details are coming yet, okay? We don't exactly have it figured out where we're going, what we're doing, but we will let you know this week. But don't come here is the point of all of that, all right? Okay, that's all announcements. Friends who are either in school or have children who are in school or are educators in some way, which as I look around this room, that's like nearly every single one of you, or have friends with kids who are back to school or grandkids, or I think I hit you all now, right? Yeah. We wanted to take a little bit of time this morning to just recognize the beginning of a new school year. Whether it's already started or it's starting this week or it's starting after Labor Day. We know there are some families that are taking kids to college for the first time this weekend as well. So, and some other ones are coming up as well. So we wanted to just take a moment to say, we love you and send you into this new season, whatever that looks like, with a blessing and maybe a gift or two. So, kiddos, if you want, now let's just, we're in a circle. We can all see each other. Do you want to stay where you are? Or do you want to come hang out with me? Stay. Great. Awesome. Stay where you are. If you've started school this week already, raise your hand. Kids and educators and teaching staff, and has anybody not started yet? Did you start tomorrow? You started this week. You're the only lone holdout? Well done. Way to go. Tara hasn't started either. That is true. Yep. So for those of you who have already started, what's been the best thing about your week? It's been a great week, apparently. Wow, we have some very different opinions with the twins here. Friends and AP Science. I love it. AP Psych. Oh, different than science. Still, yes. Well done. Nice. That's awesome. What else? Yeah, Nicole. Oh. That's amazing. Oh. Oh, the joy of receiving a generous donation, yeah? Did you say roller coaster stretches? Yeah. Oh my word. I'm totally going to use this as I'm sitting at a desk every once in a while. I love it. Roller coaster stretches. This is new. I love it. I love it. What? Anybody else want to share a really great thing of your week? Yeah. Whoa. Some things are happening already. Skipping school for a tennis tournament. Is that really skipping school? Because that's really, school activities. It is. See? Just doing something different in your school day. Lucy, what's your favorite? Seeing your friends. Awesome. In a new school this year even, right? That's awesome. Great. Okay, what's something that's maybe been hard about your week? Nothing. Awesome. Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Teddy. Everything. The first week of the year is hard. I get it. Yeah, Nicole. Waking up. I will echo that. The alarm clock has gone off far too early this week, and I have not loved that either. But we'll get used to it, right? We'll get into a rhythm. Oh, yep. Listening to 6 teachers talk for an hour. That's a lot of listening. That's hard to do after a summer of not practicing that, right? Yeah. Well, we wanted to just take a pause here to say all of those things are true and valid, and we love you all, and we are here with you as the new season starts through every single moment of it. So we're going to say a blessing all together, really to one another. It's going to be up on the screen here. It's a blessing that we've used many, many times before together. So if you are in some sort of an educational system and would like to receive this blessing, kids, I'm inviting you to do this as well. In particular, if you want to hold out your hands and receive this blessing together, let's speak these words to one another. May your days be filled with joy and gladness. May you be kind. May you be at peace. May you know you are loved by God and by us. And may you hold that love in your heart today and every day. Amen. All right, I have gifts. I have some things that can go on your backpack. I have a little backpack tag to remind you to be curious all year long and to ask questions. And I have Smarties. So if anybody would like either of those things, come see me. And Chris is going to continue us here in the morning.
I want to begin with more conversation and maybe a little bit of brainstorming and sharing. I'm curious, what is and I won't say the because I have many, but what is a favorite food? Sorry, what? Fettuccine Alfredo. Delicious. Creamy. Noodly. What else? Tiramisu. Some people love, and I find that that's not an in-between. You either don't like or like. Maybe I'm wrong about that. That's my experience. Tiramisu. What else? Pizza. Any particular kind or topping?
Thick crust with cheese in it.
Smart. Yep, I'm in agreement on the thick crust, Detroit style. What else? Egg salad. I love egg salad too, but I don't hear that often as a favorite food. All right. Oh, good to know. What else? Pomegranates. Oh, yeah. I've maybe only had those a couple times in my life. They're delightful, but also a little bit of work. No? Yeah? But worth it. Okay, maybe not Elizabeth. I don't know. You're. I see. Okay. Can get a little crazy. Pomegranates. Anybody else? Smoked pork butt. Yes. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Delicious, no doubt. Baklava, which is a dessert. Is it Danish? It's Greek or Turkish. Okay. Should probably know that. Okay, good. And there's like isn't it almond is kind of the paste, so to speak? Pistachio. Okay. Maybe I've had the cheap version in the almond version, but banquette is, thank you, also very similar. Okay, right, and that is almond for sure. Anybody else? Captain Crunch, yes, cereal. And Captain Crunch is one of the better ones. Not my favorite. Golden Grahams probably would beat Captain Crunch, but okay. Well, thank you. Why in the world are we brainstorming about food? Because, whoops, this is going to be the trick. I forgot today when I put this shirt on, it wasn't really a shirt that worked with this microphone. Hopefully it doesn't happen too many more times. I wanted to get us thinking about food because we're going to think about a story today that has a lot to do with food. It's not only about food, it's about other things too, but it is about food. And I just want you to begin thinking about the necessity of food, obviously, and yet the way that maybe we take it for granted sometimes. And yet it doesn't take very long for us to go without food before we realize our desperate need for it, and also the enjoyment of it as we're listing our favorite things, the way in which we can dream about food and salivate over food and can't wait to have that meal. It's all in there. And some of that, I think, is in the story that we're going to look at today, too. This is a story from the Gospels. And if you didn't know, these are the 4 Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. These 4 books in the New Testament tell the story of Jesus' life. What's interesting is how similar these books are in their account of Jesus and how different they are. Matthew, Mark, and Luke are the most similar. They're often called, a fancy word is the synoptic gospels. Most scholars think, drew from the same source, an earlier source that we don't have anymore. And that's why they have so much similarities between them. But even in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, there are vast differences or slight tweaks. And then you throw John in there. And John's very different than Matthew, Mark, and Luke. In style, in its framework, in the layout, in its focus. And so you have these 3 Gospels that are similar and that share a whole lot, and then you have John kind of as a very different account of Jesus' life. What's interesting, or one thing that's interesting, is that if you look at these 4 books together, there are very few stories found in all 4 of them. Depends on how you count, maybe a dozen. It's kind of interesting, right? 4 books talking about the same life of the same person, and yet there are only about a dozen or so stories or events that are in all 4 of them. Again, depends on how you count. One of those that all 4 of these Gospels decided to tell is the story we're going to look at today. And it's often called the feeding of the 5,000, although that's not really a great title, because it's not an accurate title. As we'll see in the text, there were 5,000, the text says, men. Why are men counted? It's a patriarchal world. I mean, let's just call it what it is. So if you know that there are 5,000 men, give or take, then this easily could be and maybe should be called the feeding of the 10,000 plus. because there were no doubt women and perhaps even children there. And so we're going to look at this story here together today, and we're going to listen to it 3 different times. 3 different people are going to read from one of the 4 Gospels. Again, remember this story is told in all 4 of them. We're going to hear from John's point of view. And Mike's going to read first, and then later on Joan's going to read, and then later on Teresa's going to read it. And you'll note it's not on the screen purposefully, because my invitation to you is to listen, maybe even to close your eyes, to let distractions kind of be minimized. And if we listen to this thing 3 times, to just begin to notice what's there. And as we're hearing it 3 different times, I'm going to invite us to reflect on some different pieces as we go along this morning. So, Mike, you're up first. Why don't you come on up here? This is John 6, 1 to 15. This is from the New Living Translation, and Mike is going to get us going.
After this, Jesus crossed over to the far side of the Sea of Galilee, also known as the Sea of Tiberias. A huge crowd kept following him wherever he went, because they saw his miraculous signs as he healed the sick. Then Jesus climbed a hill and sat down with his disciples around him. It was nearly time for the Jewish Passover celebration. Jesus soon saw a huge crowd of people coming to look for him. Turning to Philip, he asked, "Where can we buy bread for all of these people?" He was testing Philip, for he already knew what he was going to do. Philip replied, "Even if we worked for months, we wouldn't have enough money to feed them." Then Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. "There's a young boy here with 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what good is that with this huge crowd?" "Tell everyone to sit down," Jesus said. So they all sat down on the grassy slopes. The men alone numbered about 5,000. Then Jesus took the loaves, gave thanks to God, and distributed them to the people. Afterward, he did the same with the fish, and they all ate as much as they wanted. After everyone was full, Jesus told his disciples, "Now gather the loaves so that nothing is wasted." So they picked up the pieces and filled 12 baskets with scraps left by the people who had eaten from the 5 barley loaves. When the people saw him do this miraculous sign, they exclaimed, "Surely he is the prophet we have been expecting." When Jesus saw that they were ready to force him to be their king, he slipped away into the hills by himself.
So, to me, there's some words here in this text that feel very familiar. And we're going to start with these words that are spoken by the disciples of Jesus. Even if we worked for months, we wouldn't have enough money to feed them. And then Andrew says a few moments later, "What good is this little bit we have?" Maybe we are not always thinking about the amount of food we have to eat or the amount of food we need to feed other people, but I think we know what it is to feel like we don't have enough. There's no way I'm going to make it through this semester. I don't have enough patience to deal with everything going on. What can I do to change the systems that oppress or that hurt or harm? Even if we went to the school board, what difference would it make? What good is this little bit of time that I have? I think we live in a culture that tells us that, more often than not, that there's just not enough. There's not enough money. You don't have enough time, energy, will, hope, love, justice. It's all about scarcity. And I would even suggest and invite you to think about our kind of economic structures. Are they built on abundance, or are they built on the idea of scarcity? And I think that they're built on scarcity, that there's not enough, therefore you and I must claw and fight to get whatever we can, and then whatever we get, whatever we're lucky enough to get, we have to hold on to it and not let it go, right? I wonder, and I think I know the answer, but I just invite you to think about it. Have you ever felt the scarcity of this world? Have you looked around at your life or at the problems that make the news and just felt like there's not enough? I think if we live in a scarcity mindset long enough, we can become pretty cynical. I know I have slipped into cynicism before, many, many times, quite easily. And I wonder actually if Andrew in this text is also not in a similar place. Then Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up to, hey, there's a young boy here with 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what good is that with this huge crowd? The thing when you read the Bible is that we don't know the tone of the words, right? We don't know how they're being said. And so we have to imagine a little bit. Is Andrew saying it with kind of a sincerity, like, what good is that with this huge crowd? I mean, is he feeling the kind of hopelessness, the desire to do something, but just feeling like he can't? That's possible. I also kind of imagine that Andrew's like, hey, there's a young boy with 5 loaves and 2 fish, but what good is that going to do? You know, kind of almost some sarcasm, some cynicism. I think this is a tact that we can often adopt, or a path we can go down as we become cynical about the challenges around us. Or another possible path is to just disengage when we face difficult things or when we feel overwhelmed. I think we see that in this text. We don't know exactly what Andrew means here, but we can imagine a couple of possibilities. And here's what I want to invite us to think about and to even name out loud together. What are examples of times and places when we have felt like we don't have enough, that there just isn't enough? And I'm wondering if we can name some things that come to mind here together for just a moment. How do we, and you can speak personally if you're comfortable, but you also can just speak probably like more collectively, like how do we as human beings, or how do we as a church, how do we as a community sometimes feel like we don't have enough? What comes to mind? And this is because of the services you receive from the government, as Deb shared last week in sharing of her story. So every month, right around this time, you kind of wonder, is there going to be enough? Yeah. Yeah, it's better in February, less days to have to count. Yeah, and I bet all of us at different times in our lives, and maybe even currently, we are counting down until payday, right? Or we know that bill is coming in a couple weeks, and right now the bank account doesn't match what we know is coming. My guess is we've all felt that at some point, if we still don't. What else? Yeah. when Laura is speaking to the inequality that is sometimes really easy to notice when you're traveling and visiting other schools, other districts, other places, and you can compare it to your own experience, and then it feels like, how in the world might we ever change this? You know, I know we've felt that too, and Bethany and I often say it's not that we wish that a school district that has a really nice pool, because that's often kind of where we're encountering other schools, is we have a couple kids who swim or have swam, and we're always like, it's not that we don't want this school to have a nice pool. This is really wonderful, but how do we do this so that everybody has the chance to have this kind of a facility? And that is obviously a complex and difficult question. The answer certainly is. It can feel like we don't have enough. Yeah, I mean, that's who doesn't feel not having enough hours in the day. You get home from a long day of work and you've still got a list of things that have to get done, and you're hustling and you're tired, and suddenly it's 8 o'clock and now it's 9:30 and you want to go to bed but you can't, right? I mean, yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yep. So you have these big issues, these global issues in some cases. You know, Dale first mentioned climate change, but other justice issues too, where it feels like there are not enough people working on this. There's not enough urgency. There's not enough attention being paid. There's just not enough. Yeah. So, you know, from that kind of global scale to a very personal level, I often have felt in my life when there's conflict or disagreement or just some tension between me and another person, I often feel, I feel like I don't have what I need to be able to resolve that conflict. Sometimes it's just not enough courage. Sometimes I don't know what to do or what to say, right? It's just not enough. It's how it can feel. Yeah. So when we find ourselves in these situations, we've already maybe alluded to this a little bit, but how do you feel? How have you felt? How do you feel when you are encountering these sorts of scenarios that we've just named? Angry? Hopeless? Useless? Frustrated? Yeah. We don't know the tone with which the disciples kind of respond to Jesus when he says, well, why don't you feed these people? We don't know their tone, but I think we can imagine any of them adopting a tone of all the things we've just spoken: frustration, disillusionment, hopelessness, anger. I think Andrew and Peter and the others maybe felt something similar in that moment. Well, what I want to invite us to do is to sing a song. So if you all would hop on up there. We're going to sing this song twice. So you notice there's some repetition here this morning, both in the story that we're hearing 3 times and in the singing of this song. And Joan, when we're done singing this, you'll read the passage for the second time. And this is a song we've sung so many times, it'll be familiar to you. So what I want to invite you actually to do is to stay seated and to just sing. Certainly, of course, you're welcome. Absolutely. But also, you may just want to listen and let these words kind of bounce around a little bit and see what you're feeling as you hear these words sung. And then we'll come back to this song again in a little bit. Is that enough of an intro to get you? Look at you. You're ready. All right. Great.
All this pain, I wonder if I'll ever find my way. I wonder if my life could really change at all. All this earth, could all that is lost ever be found? Could a garden come up from this ground at all? You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of the dust. And you make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of us.
After this, Jesus crossed over to the far side of the Sea of Galilee, also known as the Sea of Tiberias. A huge crowd kept following him wherever he went because they saw his miraculous signs as he healed the sick. Then Jesus climbed a hill and sat down with his disciples around him. It was nearly time for the Jewish Passover celebration. Soon, Jesus saw a huge crowd of people coming to look for him. Turning to Philip, he asked, "Where can we buy bread to feed all these people?" He was testing Philip, for he already knew what he was going to do. Philip replied, "Even if we worked for months, we wouldn't have enough money to feed them." Then Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. "There's a young boy here with 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what good is that with this huge crowd?" "Tell everyone to sit down," Jesus said. So they all sat down on the grassy slopes. The men alone numbered about 5,000. Then Jesus took the loaves, gave thanks to God, and distributed them to the people. Afterward, he did the same with the fish, and they all ate as much as they wanted. After everyone was full, Jesus told his disciples, "Now gather the leftovers so that nothing is wasted." So they picked up the pieces and filled 12 baskets with scraps left by the people who had eaten from the 5 barley loaves. When the people saw him do this miraculous sign, they exclaimed, "Surely he is the prophet we have been expecting." When Jesus saw that they were ready to force him to be their king, he slipped away into the hills by himself.
So there's the story again. And I want to invite us to think about a different verse this time. And remember, this story is in all 4 Gospels, right? We've been listening to John. I want to just highlight something that we read in Mark's version. Again, they're all generally the same flow, but the wording can be a little different, or how someone says something. So this is Jesus. He said to, the disciples, "Hey, we should feed these folks." And they're like, "How in the world are we going to do that?" And in Mark's version, this is what Jesus says. He asks them, "What do you have? Go and find out." And I want to invite you to hear these words as if Jesus was speaking to you. What do you have? Go and find out. Jesus knows that there are not truckloads full of bread just over the hillside, and the disciples just have to go and find them, right? He's instead saying to them, I think, start with what you have. What do you have right now? Right here. Ask others, certainly. Survey the crowd as much as you'd like. But let's find out what we have right here and right now. And again, I think like Andrew, we might be tempted to say, what good is what we have? What good is this little bit? But Jesus doesn't put any parameters when he says to the disciples, go and find out what you have. In other words, he doesn't say to them, go and find out what you have, and if you have enough, if you find enough, if you find some truckloads full of bread, well, then come back and we'll figure this out. He just says, go and find out what you have. Do a little bit of searching. Take an inventory. And so my question to you, to me, is what do you have? Like today, right now, right here. What do you possess? And we'll see. I'm going to give you a minute or two to just kind of reflect on that question, and then maybe I'll open it up and see if anybody wants to share. But I want to invite you to just reflect here for a moment. What exactly do you have? And the temptation, I suspect, for all of us is going to be that we will think of things that we have, and we will then say to ourselves, what good is that? I have a half an hour on Fridays, or I have this skill that I don't possibly imagine what good it would do anyone. We very quickly disregard what we have and tell ourselves it's just not enough and will not make any sort of difference. I want to invite you to resist that voice if you hear it. So let's just take a moment here and let's reflect. Let's think, what exactly do we possess right now, right here? So what do you have? I should have added, what do we have? Right, it's not, of course, just what you as an individual have Rarely is it actually that. What do we have? So what came to mind, and I'm curious too if you're willing to share, like, did you find yourself resisting or telling yourself that what you had really wasn't worth very much? What came to your mind about what you have? You have a chainsaw. I love it. Yes, this is the sort of thing. Excellent. Thank you. You may have found yourself immediately kind of going towards like somehow grand things that you have or some unique skill maybe that only you possess, and then you were like, do I have any of those? Chainsaw. Yes, chainsaws. What else? Yeah. 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 You have a lot of relationships and connections that can be a resource, can be a way of finding what is needed. Yeah. Yep, we have an election. We have a vote. Mm-hmm. Yep. We actually have multiple votes. We're going to vote for lots of different things and lots of different people. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the ability to drive. Yeah. So, like, simple. Those of you who are not maybe quite Sydney and Sienna's age wish that you had the ability to drive. You will. It's coming. But you're probably especially aware of like what a gift it is to be able to have some independence and freedom in that way, right? Yeah. I wonder how much is just not on our radar because it's so ordinary. The ability to drive, the relationships we have, the chainsaws in our sheds, the things that just, again, they're just so ordinary. They're so everyday that we don't consider them necessarily. But I think Jesus is perhaps inviting us to consider, in the same way that he invited the disciples, to consider, what do you have? And you may need to go and find out. You may need to do a little inventory. You may need to become aware again of the ordinary things within your possession. And then we'll get to what happens after that. But we're going to sing again. A lot of up and down, putting the guitar on and off. You guys are amazing. Again, the same song. And invite you to listen and let the words kind of rattle around and be a gift to you. And then after this, Teresa will read the passage one more time, and then we'll consider it one more time and get to the table.
After this, Jesus crossed over to the far side of the Sea of Galilee, also known as the Sea of Tiberias. A huge crowd kept following him wherever he went, because they saw his miraculous signs as he healed the sick. Then Jesus climbed a hill and sat down with his disciples around him. It was nearly time for the Jewish Passover celebration. Jesus soon saw a huge crowd of people coming to look for him. Turning to Philip, he asked, "Where can we buy bread to feed all these people?" He was testing Philip, for he already knew what he was going to do. Philip replied, "Even if we worked for months, we wouldn't have enough money to feed them." Then Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. "There's a young boy here with 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what good is that with this huge crowd?" "Tell everyone to sit down," Jesus said. So they all sat down on the grassy slopes. The men alone numbered about 5,000. And then Jesus took the loaves, gave thanks to God, and distributed them to the people. Afterward, he did the same with the fish, and they all ate as much as they wanted. After everyone was full, Jesus told his disciples, "Now gather the leftovers so that nothing is wasted." So they picked up the pieces and filled 12 baskets with scraps left by the people who had eaten from the 5 barley loaves. When the people saw him do this miraculous sign, they exclaimed, "Surely he is the prophet we have been expecting." When Jesus saw that they were ready to force him to be their king, he slipped into the hills by himself.
But we only have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And Jesus says, "Bring them here." And then he told the people to sit down on the grass, and he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looked up toward heaven and blessed them. And then breaking the loaves into pieces, he gave the bread to the disciples, who distributed it to the people. I want you to notice that when the 5 loaves and the 2 fish are brought forward, Jesus does not say, "What? This is all you could find?" He doesn't look at the boy who offers them in John's gospel and say, "Aw, thanks. Thanks, little guy. That's cute, but that's not enough." He takes them, gives thanks for them, blesses them, and then multiplies them. And I don't think that this part of the story should be overlooked. Just the way in which Jesus receives these gifts. Again, not with judgment, not with a scoff, but he receives them, like genuinely and gratefully and joyfully, and he blesses them. This is probably not the first time you've heard this story. It's not my first time. And I know that in times past, I have thought a lot about how this miracle went down. Do you find yourself wondering this too? There's 5 little pieces of bread and 2 fish, and then suddenly there's this just massive amount of food. What happened? I often imagine that Jesus had a big basket, and it was just like pulling the scarf that the magician does out of the basket, the scarf that never ends. And Jesus is just like 1 fish, 2 fish, 3 fish, and they just keep coming. Because I can't figure out another way that this went down, you know. And it's interesting. If you're curious and you're wondering, how did this happen? What were the logistics? I invite you to think about it more. But I hope you won't think about the how to the point that it's the only thing you think about. Because I don't think it's the point. We often get caught up in the how, and I'm not just talking about in figuring out how this miracle happened. We often get caught up in the how of our own lives and our own need. So there's this big problem that we have, and we see what we possess, what we have to try and respond to this need. And all we can think about is, how is that ever going to make a difference? We want to figure out the logistics. Does anybody else feel this way or do this? Right? Like, here's this problem, and unless I can see clearly how what I have can lead to this, which will lead to a resolution or a fixing of the problem, what's the point? We get locked in on the how. And it's not that we shouldn't think about the how, but it can paralyze us, I think, or cause us to disengage. We might miss the point. And so what if instead of getting hung up on the how, what if instead we just did our best to offer freely what we had? To do it openly and with trust and with hope, even if all we have is a sliver of hope. Could we more and more become people who do our best to just say, here's what I have, and I don't know the how. And I don't understand exactly how this makes a difference, but it is what I have, and so I offer it freely. Jesus receives the gifts that were there that day. He gives thanks for them, he blesses them, and then he multiplies them. They all ate as much as they wanted, and the disciples picked up the pieces and filled 12 baskets with scraps left by the people who had eaten from the 5 barley loaves. The story could have been just that Jesus multiplied these things and people had enough to eat, and then they went home. But no, there are leftovers. Not just enough, but more than enough. I don't know exactly why this detail is in. Scholars think about all sorts of things, 12 baskets representing the 12 tribes of Israel, and you can do all of this interesting consideration of why this is there. For me, at this moment in my life, on this day, I'm grateful that it's there because it is such a shattering, like it shatters and breaks apart my scarcity mindset. It's not just that there's enough, there's more than enough. That is the power of what happens when people offer what they have and God blesses it and multiplies it. There ends up being more than enough. How? I don't know. I don't always know the logistics. I can't always explain it. And sometimes we need to be very honest. Sometimes when there's a need, and we've named some of them today, they don't get fixed magically. There aren't leftovers. There's not enough. And so there is this tension present. We might as well just name it. And when we are willing to live open-handedly and offer what we have freely, there's often something that does happen, a multiplication. And we thought that's such a big idea and such a hard thing for us to believe that we better do more than just talk about it. And that's why we are going to gather around this table here. Because you might go to the store and the church says we are going to have a feast, and you're like, what's a jar of jam going to do to contribute to a feast? What is this? This is this little bit? I got a thing of crackers at home. It's not enough. I should probably make a couple loaves of bread, or I don't know. And we might feel like what we have to offer just isn't much. But when you start finding that a number of people bring what they have, and they offer it freely, as I think we'll find out in a moment here, it's not only more than enough, it's also like more than enough and it tastes really good. It's more than enough and it's really enjoyable. It's more than enough and it connects us, and all these things happen when we, in sometimes what feel like very small ways, offer what we have. So here's what we're going to do. We will take communion in a few minutes, but first we're just inviting folks to the table because you may not have known, but when they first shared communion as this early group of Christians, we do get the sense from what we have in the Bible that often what would take place before and after communion was a feast. They would share a full meal together, and then this was a part of it. And so we're going to try and live into that a little bit. We're going to take like 5, 6, 7 minutes and invite you to come to the table and grab a plate and find something that you like and grab some toppings here. Homemade orange marmalade, my goodness. Just check it out. Some chili jam is here. These are very interesting and fun. I do have my glasses on, but it is still hard to read. I don't know, you're going to have to try this one on your own. It's in French or something. It's honey. Thank you. Fancy honey, apparently. And then we're just going to mingle. So come get a plate. Don't feel like you have to go back to your seat. In fact, don't go back to your seat. Hang out, chat for a few minutes, and then after we've had time to do that, then we'll kind of move into communion, all right? Let's come. Let's eat. Let's enjoy. Let's feast. If you're at home, let me invite you to pull out something you love to eat and just dig in. You should be feasting at home as well if you're with us there, and then we'll share communion together. All right, everybody, you don't necessarily need to get back to your seat, but I do want to invite you to get bread and cup. So we can even pass these around, like take them back to the groups you were by. Yep. For the bread part, you're just going to want to find some of the bread here, or you could use a cracker and just tear off a little piece. And so maybe you take a half piece for your family if you're here with a crew, or just grab something. There are gluten-free crackers in this jar here. So you just want what you need for communion. If you're at home, gather that as well right now. Jason, thank you so much. We got lots of juice here, so don't be shy. Yeah, I think I've heard from a couple of people something to the effect of, please, can we do this every week? Who doesn't love bread to begin with? And you know, this seat arrangement, it was fun to see you all come in and be like, what's the math? What math do I have to do to figure out where my seat is? Because I know where my seat is normally, but what's the calculation to figure out where I sit today? And we love doing this. You know, of course, with Gate Baptist, the Congolese community that meets afterwards, we have to work with them. And we actually have not had a conversation in the years so that they've been here like, what do you think about keeping this set up for a season? So we may do that. But today, we do need to put it back together before we leave. So if you're able to stick around for a couple minutes, it really isn't all that bad to put it back together, especially if we have a few folks. I need a piece of bread. So this meal points us to lots of things. If you're, and all of you are, as I look around the room today, you are people who've been here for some time. You know that every week we probably talk about something a little different when it comes to this meal. And today, no surprise, I would invite you to think about how this meal points us toward kind of the multiplication, the expansion that God seems to do when we offer our lives open-handedly. Jesus offers his life. And it does not end in death. It ends in the multiplication of his life. And so we take and eat this bread, remembering that truth together. And we feast. I mean, I love that the early church always encapsulated communion, the Last Supper, within a meal. When we just do it normally, it's, of course, a small piece of bread, and it's hard to maybe get the sense that this is feeding us. A little bit easier when you're feasting. Your stomach's a little more full today than it might normally be. And I think that helps us remember that God, in fact, feeds us, supplies what we need, helps us. And so we remember that as we take and drink this morning. We're going to sing one more song, if you'd like to bun up. And this time, I invite you to stand, if you'd like. And to, if you're in these sections here, you might have to turn around. You're actually just facing the way you normally would face. And let's sing this song that is this both reminder of how we are loved and this invitation to be people of love in the world. Let's stand and sing.
Your love never fails, never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails, never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails, never gives up, never runs out on me. Love. fails and never gives up, never runs out on me. Love. On and on and on and on it goes. It overwhelms, it satisfies my soul. And I'll never ever have to be afraid. Just one thing remains. One thing remains. Your love never fails and never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails and never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails and never gives up, never runs out on me. Love.
What a gift to be together this morning, to share in good food with each other, and to remind each other that what we have may not seem like it is enough, and yet it is. It is all that God asks of us, is to offer what we have. And so let's be those people this week. Be people who believe that what you have is a gift to be offered. Be people who then offer it freely to the world, and then be people who see God take what you have and multiply it in the lives of other people. Be those folks this week. Amen. Amen. If you're able to stick around and help us move a few things around, be great. We have to vacuum the floor a little bit, it looks like, as well. We got a little cleanup to do. Otherwise, have a great week.